Okay. Let's take our prayer, please. And together, Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors. We very humbly acknowledge you. What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings. That our faults never become barriers between us and you. It may be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you.
May you listen to these words of ours.
You listen to these words.
And may you be open.
You open our encumbered hearts through the mysteries of your Torah. May this, our study, be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory. Sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul source in all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servants, for whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah, their innocence and their holiness, stand for us as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. In their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study, as in the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes, that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Oh no 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 no. Na 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 na. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. No 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Ah na 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 na. Oh no no ya na 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 na. Oh no 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 oh no. Na 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 na. Na na na. na 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 na. Oh na na na. Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 na. Oh na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ah na 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 na. Page 300 is where we are. And we're going to just keep on going with the question of the relative standing of Jacob and Esau with regard to their blessings. Each one in the end got a blessing. Isaac gives Esau a blessing after he finds out his giving the blessing to Jacob, apparently by mistake, apparently. But he says, no, Gam Baruch Yad, let him be blessed. That's the blessing stands. And then he says, Esau says, and that's it. So I don't get a blessing. You only have one blessing. He says, no, I'll give you a blessing too. And he gives him a blessing as well. And just looking at the pshat, just looking at the simple, straightforward understanding of the text of the Torah, the question then comes up: what does that mean? One blessing, two blessings? You know, when if we're fortunate enough to have more than one child sitting at a Shabbat table, there's no question every child gets a blessing. So what's this blessing about? And then when Isaac says, of course I'm going to give you a blessing, are the two blessings of equivalent status or equivalent power? So just before we get into all of the medieval and post-biblical layers of understanding about who Esau is and who Jacob is, we have it straightforward, from the text, from the reading of the text itself. What is this other blessing, and what's the struggle about? And the implication, I think, is fairly drawn that no, that second blessing is not of the same status or power, right? Later on in the Torah, in the same parsha, this coming Shabbos' parsha, turns out that we're reading this parsha this week. It says that Isaac reaffirms the blessing for Jacob. So there is this, primary blessing, but there is then the second blessing to Esau, and how they, compare to each other, or how they coexist with each other, or if at all, is a question that just arises from the text. I want to just for a second review what what Isaac said to Esau as his blessing, right? When he finally, he's all shook up. We're going to get to it in a second. And he says, what can I do for you? I've already given him the blessing. This is verse 37, chapter 27 in Genesis. When he says to Esau, what? I already said that he should be your Lord. and that I have given all of his brothers to be servants to him, and I have supported him with grain and with new wine. What can I do for you? So then Esau says the very heart-wrenching a plea. He says, there's only one blessing. You have only one blessing. That's it. Bless me also. You're my father. And he cries out a great cry. So he says the following blessing. This is verse 39. So he says, may you have your dwelling among the fat of the land, and from the dew from the heavens above. You'll live on your sword. You will serve your brother. And then when you become sovereign, or when you become powerful, you'll be able to overthrow his yoke from your neck. Right. So this adds more questions to our wondering about the relationship between the blessings, because Yitzchak characterizes the blessing that he gave first to Yaakov when Esau comes in. He says, "What am I going to do for you? I already made your brother your Lord." And at the end, the last words of this secondary quote unquote blessing is, you know what? You'll be able to get out from under the yoke. If you become powerful enough, then you'll be able to overthrow his his subjugation of you. So the question is, does that cancel out the first blessing? That would be, another part of this question. So how do these blessings live with one another? These are questions that come, as I say, straight out of the Torah reading. And then how much more so when they are overlaid with the kinds of symbolism and the kind of historical consciousness that the symbolism represents in the mind of the Zohar and the mind of the Jewish people, starting with Rabbinic Judaism already, which is Esau is the enemy, Esau is the oppressor, Esau is the one who destroys Israel. So then what's going on here? We were blessed, but Esau was also blessed. And Esau is blessed with the power to take away our, to use a dirty word, our supremacy. So how's that going to happen? So this is underlying much of the discussion that we already had. And we had the discussion last time that in comparison between the blessing of Esau and the blessing of Jacob, there was a major distinction that was made. What was the major distinction? Rashbi says there's no comparison between the two of them. The blessings of Jacob are such and such. The blessings of Esau are such and such. It's like apples and oranges. Craig.
Says that for Jacob, it says you will receive, the dew of the heavens, everything from above. Whereas with Esau, it says you will get the fat of the earth. So in other words, below.
Right. So it's the above and the below. So the distinction that the Zohar puts out, and this is in a number of ways it says it. Rashbi says it most emphatically. The blessings of Yaakov are not material blessings per se. They are first and foremost spiritual blessings. The blessings that Esau is granted are physical, material, economic, socio-political, all this worldly stuff. That's where Esau is granted success. But Yaakov's blessing is supernal. It's above. It's in the divine realms. It's in the realms of the spirit. The blessings of God pouring into Yaakov, into the people of Israel, is a promise of blessing that is not to be measured in political power or in economic prosperity or in freedom even. So that's the basic distinction that is given before. And then the Zohar says, yeah, but eventually it has to come down from heaven, right? The dew descends from heaven to the earth. There is an earthly component to the blessing for Yaakov as well. So what's the answer that the Zohar gives? In what way does that earthly blessing come about? The Zohar has actually a machloket. It has a difference of opinion about how to understand the earthly part of the blessing to Yaakov. The Zohar either has it as there were historical moments when the Jewish people flourished, and those blessings came true. The time of David, the time of Solomon. So those times were in this real world, and we had it really, really good. And we were actually victorious in battle, and we had a little bit of an empire. So this is the Zohar's, one option. That yes, we actually did have the fulfillment of these blessings in this worldly context. But in more than one time, the Zohar gives a different answer. What's the Zohar's other answer? Going once, going twice. All right, the answer, well, we can wait until Mashiach comes and then we'll get the answer that was a hint. Right? The answer is, you're right. There are no fulfillments in this world for the success, the flourishing of the Jewish people until the Messiah comes, until Mashiach. And when Mashiach comes, that's when that part of the blessing will be fulfilled. So until such time, that blessing is in abeyance. It has yet to be fulfilled. The first opinion is, yes, every once in a while it is fulfilled, and then we come back, we sin, we mess up things, and then the blessing has to be taken away. But the other answer is it's never been really fulfilled. This is a blessing that, because it comes from heaven down into the earth, its real effect, becoming effective is only when Mashiach finally comes. Those are the answers that the Zohar has given. That's what we reviewed until now. Okay, so now we're on the last two lines on page 300, where we continue working on this. So Rabbi Yossi, son of Rabbi Shimon. Somebody's going to read for us, please. Okay, Beryl, what a surprise.
Well, you're stuck with my reading.
All right. Worst things could happen.
Yeah, I'll stay awake. Son of Rabbi Shimon, son of Laconia, said to Rabbi Elazar,
okay. Wait, just there's a note there. So we're not going to read the note, but the Zohar, he gets these names a little bit. These are names that, of course, as many of the names of the rabbis in the Zohar are names that come from the rabbinic literature from before, from the Mishnah, from the Midrash, and even from the Gemara. So the note will tell us that there is this set of names comes up, but it comes up in a funny way. The Zohar mixes up kinship lines. It makes a son into a father, or a father-in-law into a cousin. It a little bit gets these things all mixed up. So you can read that note at your own free time if you can't sleep tonight. But anyway, this is where we are. So we're at Shimon ben Laconia. This is not Shimon bar Yochai, right? But Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Shimon son of Laconia, says to Rabbi Elazar. Okay, go ahead.
Have you heard anything from your father as to why the blessings Isaac bestowed upon Jacob were not fulfilled, while those bestowed upon Esau were fulfilled entirely?
Okay, so this is a follow-up on all of that stuff that we had before, where if we take seriously what the Zohar said, that the blessing has to wait until Mashiach, so then we have this question, that's not fair. Why? Why does Esau get his bracha immediately, And our bracha has to be in abeyance. It has to be on a holding pattern for the entire, stretch of history until it finally will get fulfilled. What's the deal? Why is that? So he asks, did you hear anything from your father? Right. So we have a father-son thing going on here. Right. And of course, Isaac is giving the blessing to Yaakov and giving a blessing that seems on the one hand to be primary and to be better than Esav's bracha. And yet at the same time, it's, what good is it if it doesn't come true? While Esav's blessing is coming true straight away. Okay. He replied,
all those blessings were fulfilled.
Are fulfilled.
All those blessings are fulfilled along with other blessings bestowed upon Jacob by the Blessed Holy One. However, Jacob immediately obtained above, Esav below. Later, when King Messiah arises, Jacob will receive above and below, while Esav will be deprived of everything, left with no share or memory in the world, as is said. The house of Jacob will be fire, the house of Joseph flame, and the house of Esav stubble.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the Haftorah for this Shabbos. Is that true? Hold on a second.
It's a Sephardic Haftorah.
The Sephardic Haftorah. Okay, so there it is. It's in the back of the Chumash somehow. Yeah. Okay. Good. Ours is from Malachi. Right. Okay. Good. Thank you.
For he will be deprived of everything, and Jacob will inherit two worlds, this world and the world that is coming. Of this time is written, saviors will climb Mount Zion to execute judgment on Mount Esav, and dominion will be Yud-He-Vav-He's. The dominion that Esav obtained in this world will revert to the Blessed Holy One alone.
Okay, we'll stop that right there to the Blessed Holy One alone, and we'll get to the rest of it later. So what's the answer? So the answer that the Rabbi Elazar gives, notice he doesn't say it's in the name of his father. We can assume that his father gave him the answer, or he just knows the answer. But he says, what are you talking about? There is no deferred blessing for Jacob. It's not that Esav got his blessing immediately and Jacob didn't get his blessing immediately. Jacob also got his blessing immediately. The blessings both took hold right away. But as we said before, right now, the blessing that took hold for Jacob is above. It's the spiritual blessings. The spiritual blessings were vouchsafed to Jacob at that moment and became real at that moment. And no delay. The only thing that's a delay is down below. And here we have this picture that we have two realms, the spiritual and the physical material worlds. And Jacob is ensconced in the glory and the beauty and the goodness of the spiritual world. And Esav is in this world, and Esav rules, right? Just like in the slang, Esav rules. And this world is Esav's world. And we have a kind of a little bit of a kind of an ironic twist back to what Esav objected to his father. He says, "You only have one bracha." When Yitzchak says, "I gave the bracha to Yaakov, what am I going to do for you?" And Esav says, quite rightly, "So what do you mean? I'm chopped liver. I'm your son. Give me a bracha." There's only one bracha that you have. So, and that's rhetorical. Of course not. There can't be such a thing. And yet, when we get to this answer, what we have is a zero-sum game. Either Esav rules over this world, this material world, or Yaakov will rule over this world. And right now it's Esav. and Yaakov rules over a separate kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, Malchus Shamayim. But the realm of this world is in the control of Esav until Mashiach time. And then what will happen? Esav will be wiped out. That's what we have here in this text, right? There is no room for, two states for two people. There's no, for two peoples. There's no room here for Esav will flourish and Jacob will flourish. Esav will no longer be able to oppress Jacob, but that doesn't mean that Esav can't have their own happy-go-lucky, lives. That's what we would like to think, right? That's how we usually picture what it means to get to a better place. But that's not what the Zohar is. There's only one blessing in the end. There's only one real blessing. When it comes to this world, either it's Esav or it's us. Right now it's Esav, and until Mashiach comes, we just have to learn to live with it. And when we finally have our day in court, Esav will be demolished. Esav's memory will be erased. Right? This is what we say about Amalek. Right? So this is very, very, very harsh. This is very, very radical. So I just want to call it out and bring it to everybody's attention. Does anybody want to say anything about it? It's a very quiet night tonight. All right, so what I would simply say, first of all, we read, let's read note 307.
Why the blessings Isaac bestowed upon Jacob were not fulfilled. Rabbi Yossi's question reflects the painful problem of medieval Jewry. Why is Israel, Jacob, dominated by Christian rule, Esav and Edom?
That's the question, right? Why are we dominated by them? So the note makes this into a medieval question. And of course, as I've mentioned more than once, that's completely true. That's the context of this whole discussion as the Zohar produces it. And that's the context pre-medieval times. That's the context of the rabbinical struggle with Roman rule and with the beginning of the Christian hegemony starting in the 4th century. So, these are definitely reflections of that question, but the answer, as I'm saying here, not to the question, is very extreme. It's an all or nothing answer, right? And we've talked a little bit about this in various ways to recognize that that's the way the Zohar is talking about it. The one thing to say, to try to say, to mitigate it, because look, some people will say, what's the problem? I don't have any problem with that. That's exactly, they're going to get what they deserve, and that's all there is to it. And that's very much a contemporary Jewish point of view. That's very very, very accepted, and not only accepted, but very powerful in today's Jewish world and in Israel. This is a strong feeling and a strong perspective. But even in the right wing, certainly at this moment, we have this paradoxical situation where Israel has leadership that is so proud of the fact that they're making peace with, all these Arab states that are not paradigms of virtue and good governance even, and they're for mutual benefit. right? They're not out to destroy the other peoples. The accusations that Israel is out to destroy the Palestinians are false. The real thing is, just as long as we can subdue them and subjugate them, or if they have anything to offer us, as long as we can benefit from them, we're happy. We're happy to to be successful. So this idea of totally wiping them off from even memory is even much more extreme than most of the players in today's Jewish world would adopt. The answer is what I've said more than once about the symbolism that's involved. When we're talking about Esav, we're talking about pure evil. We're talking about the force in the world that is trying to destroy Israel. And that means that that needs to be completely, finally defeated so that it can never raise its head up again. And that force that wishes to make an end to Israel, let's go and let's completely wipe them out from being a people, that force needs to be permanently, forever destroyed. But that doesn't line up with the realities of different groups and peoples who have more complicated agendas, and that's not their raison d'etre to just simply make sure that Israel doesn't exist. So that means, yes, coexistence for in the world that we are familiar with, not this black and white world of demonic forces versus the forces of light. In the world that we're familiar with, yes, it'll be complicated and it'll be with a lot of interconnectedness. That would be one way to respond to this text. Len.
Yeah, about the phrase we just read about that when King Messiah comes, then Esau will be deprived of everything. Was the messianic expectation of justice being realized something that was in this period of the Zohar or several hundred years prior to it, or does it go back much further in the tradition?
Well, the conflict here is a conflict that has been ratified within Tanakh itself. Whether you look at Ovadia or whether you look at Malachi, there is an acceptance that this is a fight between Esav and Yaakov, and Esav is an enemy of Yaakov. And the verse that we have here is a verse that is traditionally recited right after Shirat Hayam, right after we have the celebration of God's defeating the Egyptians at the Red Sea. We say at the very end of that tradition, this verse, V'alu Moshim be'Har Tzion lishpot et Harisav v'ayitala Hashem amlucha. Hashem lemelech al kol eretz v'yamu Hashem echad u'shmo echad. That's our concluding hope, which is a biblical hope. So it predates the Zohar by thousands of years. Of course, the end of time, V'haya b'acharit hayamim in Yeshaya, the idea of an end of time. These are old concepts. How you fill in, the contours are, okay, everything will be great. When we say the lion will lie down with the lamb, what does that end up actually saying? Is that the same thing as saying there will be no more lions? Isn't the essence of a lion to eat the lamb? If you have a lion that lies down with the lamb, is that a lion, or is that a lobotomized lion? Is that a real lion?
The lion that's already eaten.
Yeah, the other lamb, right? The lamb that was on the other side of the lion. Yeah. So this is an old story. This is the question of singing at the Red Sea. These people are out to get me. If they can be drowned and destroyed, that's the best thing that could ever happen.
Yeah, but what I mean is the reference to Moshiach Satan.
Mashiach is right. Mashiach is post-biblical, but it's definitely already in rabbinic times. So it's at least 1,000 years before the Zohar. Yeah. All right. Any other comments, Seth?
The note 307, it makes this direct reference to Christianity, and I'm wondering how prevalent is that in this interpretation?
Very complete. Esav equals Edom equals, so the historical way that this works is that Esav is Edom, which is the Edomites, which is a local power that existed in biblical times and beyond. They become identified then with the Roman Empire. That becomes Rome. And then, as I say, in the 4th century, when Christianity takes over and becomes the official religion and theology and philosophy and raison d'etre of the Roman Empire, and they have power to exercise their desires, that's when, for instance, we lose our power to administer our calendar. That's when we lose the patriarchate, because the Christian rulers in Rome decided that we are going to nip this people, in the bud. We're not going to give them the autonomy that they, enjoyed, even with all the wars and the rebellions and so on. We're gonna deprive them of the wherewithal to create an autonomous religious life. So, and that's one of the interesting things that happened with our being in Babylonia. The fact that we were not completely in the land of Israel and in the area of the Roman Empire's reach was a lifesaver for the Jewish people. So we ended up, being in Babylonia, in the Persian Empire, and then in the Muslim Empire. And of course, with the Muslims, we have our own problems. So Ishmael becomes Islam, and Esav becomes Christianity. And that's, like I say, that's 1,000 years before Christianity is 1,000 years before the Zohar, and the Ishmael becoming Islam is, from the 7th century on. Yeah, David.
Although, let me see.
No, we heard you, and then you stopped yourself.
All right. Although Edom is not geographically the same place as Rome, is that true?
Correct. Right, but Rome took over Edom, and as far as they're concerned, then they just get conflated.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. All right. So this is the struggle. So now what the end of this paragraph says is eventually Edom gets eliminated, right? Wiped away, and God becomes king, right? V'aytal Hashem Amlucha, and the dominion will belong to the eternal, right? The dominion that Esav obtained in this world will revert to the Holy Blessed One. Okay, so now that's where we stopped. So we're 5 lines from the bottom of that paragraph. Is
it not his?
Is it now not his? What do you mean? God will be the ruler? God is always the ruler. God is the ruler forever. This is God's world. God is God, right? God is mighty, right? So what do you mean? Then God will be God. Go ahead.
Rather, even though the Blessed Holy One reigns above and below, he has granted the other nations, each and every one, an inherited share to utilize in this world. But at that time, he will take dominion from all of them, so all will be his, as is written. Dominion will be Yud-He Vav-He's, his alone, as is written. Yud-He Vav-He will be king over all the earth.
Okay. So this encapsulates a kind of a theory of universal governance and the political ways that of history that comes back from rabbinic times again, and here it's put into in short. The answer is yes, of course, theoretically, God is the God of everything, but actually, right now, each nation has their own divinely appointed prince or official or angel that operates their national destiny, and they are given quite a bunch of their tremendous power by God to act out their own struggles and their own ambitions. And this is God's, allowing them to do that until Mashiach Zeiten. When Mashiach's time comes, that's when God pulls all the power back to God, and none of these other petty monarchs will have any power anymore. We have a phrase that we say, for instance, when we sing Shalom Aleichem Friday night. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Asharei Malachei Elyon. Right, so we say welcome, right? Ministering angels from above. Mi Melech, you come from. So that's not quite what the song says. Helen, you sound great, but you have to pay attention to the words. It doesn't say Mi Melech Malachei Hamlach. No, it's Mi Melech Malchei, not Malachei. Malachei is the angels of. It's Mi Melech. You come from the Melech Malchei Hamlachim, who is the King of Kings, right? Like in the movie, right? So God is the King of Kings. Until Mashiach comes, there are all these other kings that are running around ruling the world. And we don't mean necessarily, the earthly king, the spiritually appointed angelic kings, and God is the king of all of those kings. And then one day there won't be any more kings. There will only be one king. So, okay, first Larry and then Len.
Well, I was just going to say that this, in addition to everything else it's doing, it's giving an explanation for a problem in the text that we have from Zechariah that we sing at the end of Aleinu, right? And then Mar Vayad L'Melech Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shmo Echad. It always sounds very good, but the question arises: well, isn't God's name one already? Isn't God one? Because we say Shema, that God is one. So I mean, it means God's going to be one. God's not one. So this actually gives a sort of cogent explanation for that, which is, yeah, of course, God really is unified and one and governs everything, but God has given temporal reign to a bunch of different suzerains right now, but in the end, they'll take it all away. And at the same time, ironically, it kind of reverses the pshat of the Torah, which seemed to indicate that Esav's standing would be protected permanently, in addition to Yaakov's standing being protected. This is basically saying that when King Messiah comes, not only will Esav's standing not be protected, Esav will disappear. There won't be any Esav.
Right. There won't be any Esav. Right. Finished. Correct. And that's again, a part of the whole question of how we conceive of Messianic times. Is Messianic times a real qualitative change in reality itself? Or is it simply a period of Pax Israeliana, or however that would be in the Latin, right? What Rambam as a rationalist doesn't buy what the Zohar says. Rambam says, Ein bein yemot HaMashiach le'olam hazeh ele shibud malchuyot bilvad. The only difference between this world and the time of the Messiah is that that all of the nations won't oppress us. That's what he says. So he doesn't buy this total wiping out idea. Len.
Yeah, it's just about the Shalom Aleichem. He said the Mi Melech. I had read someplace, and I don't remember exactly where, that the Mi was not original to the text. The Mi got put onto Melech and became Mi Melech, but the original text, it was just plain Melech, not Mi Melech.
Yeah, that's what some people say. It's actually, I think, in the Sim Shalom, if I'm not mistaken. It always amazes me what they decide to think is worth mentioning and what they decide is meaningful to give to their people and what they don't say. This is what they choose to say. Yeah, some people say that the me is out, but all that means is that that's a textual quirk. But the answer is the same. I mean, the meaning ends up being the same. Think of it without the me. So it's Shalom Aleichem, welcome angels, ministering angels of Amohai. Then you take out the me and you go, Melech Malchei Amlachim. Who is then the real king, the king of kings, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So, the point about God is the same point. Do we connect the dots, or do we make them two separate statements? Thank you, angels. But of course, the real king of kings is God. So that's that little detail of how you read it, but it doesn't change the main point. I want to bring up last week when Abraham summons his servant to go on the mission to find Isaac, his son, to find for Isaac a wife. So this is chapter 24 in Genesis. And they're in the middle of discussing everything. And Abraham makes a stipulation that Isaac cannot be brought to wherever that family is, that when the servant will finally find the proper the partner for Isaac, that partner has to be brought back here. So and then the servant says, well, what if she doesn't want to come back? Should I bring Isaac back? And Abraham emphatically repeats verse 6, chapter 24. And Abraham said to him, you better watch it. Do not even think about it. Lest you bring my son back there. That's not on the table. We're not talking about that. Non-negotiable. And then the question is, so what about this difficulty that the servant is saying? Well, what am I going to be able to, what if they say no? So Abraham says the following, verse 7. Hashem Elokei Hashamayim, Asher lekachani mibeit avi ume'eretz moladati, Asher diber li, Asher nishba li, le'mor lezaracha etein et haaretz hazot, Hu yishlach malacho lefanecha, velakachta isha livni misham. So Abraham promises the angel that God will send. God promises the messenger, the servant, that God will send an angel. God will send a messenger, an angel, malacho, to help the servant succeed in his mission. But there's a long description of God, and I don't want to go through all of the pieces of description. But the first phrase is Hashem Elokei Hashamayim, God, the Almighty of heaven. So all the traditional readers jump up on this, and you have Rashi. So Rashi says Hashem Elokei Hashamayim, Velo Amar Velokei Haaretz. Abraham doesn't say God, the Almighty of heaven and earth. He doesn't say, isn't that what we're always saying? You are God above and below. He says no, he only mentions the God, right? Olamala Amar, the Yashbiacha, etc. Right? Before that, it says, verse 3, V'ashbiacha, I'm going to make you swear, says Abraham to the servant, Bashem Elokei Hashamayim ve'Elokei Haaretz. By the Almighty, who is the God of the Almighty of heaven and the Almighty of the of earth, of the world, of the land. So he first refers to God as the God of heaven and earth, and now he only says God, who's the God of heaven. Why? So his answer is because he says, now that I have done all my work, God is the heaven, is the God of heaven and earth. But when God first took me out, that's what he says here, God of heaven, who took me out of my homeland, at that point, God was not the head God of earth. At that point, God was only the God of heaven, because on earth, nobody accepted God's rule. I had to be the first one to start promulgating this. I had to be the first one to teach this. So that's Rashi's answer based on the Midrash, that their God's majesty, God's sovereignty on earth is contingent on our acceptance of that sovereignty. And when we don't recognize that sovereignty, we don't behave according to that consciousness, when we have our own things going on, then God is not, as it were, the God of the world. This is how some people explain the first bracha in the Amidah, right? We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoteinu v'Imotenu. Okay, right? Why don't we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Elokei Avraham? Why don't we say, in most blessings, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, Eternal One, who is the Almighty God of the whole world, right? And in fact, the Talmud says, Kol bracha she'eini Hashem u'malchut eina bracha. If you don't acknowledge God's sovereignty of the world in your blessing, it's not a real blessing. So why don't we say Melech HaOlam in the first blessing? So some people answer, because we're talking about patriarchal times. In patriarchal times, God was not the God of the whole world. It was the job of the patriarchs and the matriarchs to make God the God of the whole world.
So Rabbi, I don't know if you, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. You're
Okay.
loud and clear.
So this gets me to something I said maybe 2 years ago. My favorite line of everything is the line in Odon Olam that says, until God is known, until God's work is done, he won't be known. So this then explains almost everything that you've been talking about today, that until the work of humans on earth is done, then God won't be known. So it's not the 6 days. It's this long, enormously long 6th day that's going to continue until human beings manage to work it out.
Right. So, but it brings us, then the question is, are we going to be able to work it out? Are Jacob's children going to actually succeed in doing all of this work?
Well, that's the whole thing you've been saying ever since we introduced the Esau-Jacob controversy, that this is a controversy that basically has to be worked through. You can't get around it. And there are times when it waxes and wanes. It goes one way, it goes another way. But ultimately, it's our job to fix the world, which is, of course, consistent with all of the different kinds of Kabbalistic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. But because the question in the end is, could we actually really do it? And because that question ties up with the question I mentioned before. If it's just a progressive view, we're just going to keep on fixing it until it's fixed, right? And we're just going to keep on hacking away at it, and until we finally get it, the whole thing fixed up. right? We fix all the leaks and all the everything, and we do it. Is that then the definition of the times of the Messiah? Does the Messiah arrive automatically as a affirmation that we finally did what we were supposed to do? Or a very, very strong counter view is the Messiah is this Deus ex machina factor, because we, as much as we have to do what we have to do, the qualitative change in history to a messianic world has to be done from above.
So
We merit that
let me give it one
eventual
more shot.
moment, but by moving forward, but we don't accomplish the whole thing. Those
So-
are the two ways of looking at it throughout Jewish thought.
But just to give it one more shot, that's why justice isn't sufficient. Because if justice is the working out of good against evil on the earth, then what we have to do is pray for God's grace, God's mercy, to overtake justice. Because in justice, we're never going to quite make it right, because everybody who's always tried to make it right has always messed it up. Whether it's the Christians who tried to make it right, and they did try to make it right until the Romans messed it up. And maybe even, well, I'm not sure about Muhammad if he ever tried to make it right. I guess it's a different theory of whether you can rule by the sword or not, you know?
Well,
So-
that's part of the whole question too, yes.
Yeah, all right. So, but certainly Jesus, you know, his heart was in the right place most of the time, except when he said he's bringing a sword also, you know? So that's how those two sides eventually have to rely on chesed.
Right, well put.
Okay.
And yes, and one of the rabbinic discussions of why did the second temple get destroyed, right? The famous one is sinat chinam, right? Unwarranted hatred. People hated each other for no good reason, which assumes that there is sometimes a good reason, and that is understood to sometimes be Esav. You know, you gotta hate Amalek for sure. So, but what the when the rabbis wonder about this and wonder and ponder over this whole thing, what exactly went wrong? Why this terrible national catastrophe of dimensions that couldn't be imagined? Because again, it wasn't temporary, it wasn't a 70-year exile and then we came back and all kinds of stuff. They had a sense that this was really, a biggie. So we really use that message, which is a super important message about avoiding hatred, causeless hatred. At least we pay lip service to it. Working on it is super hard. But there's another very interesting proposition that the rabbis advance, that the reason that our second temple was destroyed was because we insisted on working on judging everything according to the Torah exactly, right? Shadanu din Torah, that they insisted on just following the dictates of the law. Back to what you were saying about pure justice without the chesed part, without the understanding underneath it all, with devotion, with feeling that we're being faithful, and in the end, that faithfulness becomes our destruction, right? So yeah, this is exactly what they're saying.
So,
Yeah.
so Rabbi, the original sin is logic.
But it doesn't make sense. What do you mean? How could that be the original sin?
No, but it's the tree of knowledge. It's the tree of knowledge. That the original sin is chacham, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. So back to this. So what the Zohar now says is, and this I want to bring it back to what we were just talking about, is that eventually that's what's going to happen when Mashiach time arrives, right? The restoration of godly sovereignty and majesty of the world. That's when God will be the Melech. That's when God will be the king. So without going through this, constant repetition of everything that we've been saying forever, it still brings up the question, why did God cede all of this power to begin with? And what is the turning point that finally makes it possible or necessary for God to take all the power back? Right? What is it? So we were just talking about, well, if you just say it as it's basically an accumulation, right? We right now the world is broken by 100 points, and over 100 years we fix 1 point, and over 1,000 years we fixed another 5 points, and then in another 10,000 years we'll fix another 94 points. We'll fix all the 100 points, and Mashiach, poof, and we did it. So then it all goes back to God. We bring it back to God, right? We offer all of the world back to God, and we restore God's sovereignty through our own wonderful efforts. But if it's not only contingent on our efforts, then that problem becomes, a mystery. What's then going to make that why aren't we just going on eternally until we do it? And if it's impossible, then why do we have to wait another 5,000 years to acknowledge that it's impossible? We know it's impossible now. So no, God, enough already. And that's part of Jewish heritage as well, right? Come on, God, it's, we got it. We got the point. How much more suffering do you want to countenance? So this is, the question doesn't go away. And the answer that God will finally restore God's own majesty and take away, fire, all of the incompetent and evil, corrupt lackeys that have been empowered by him to do the administrative work. Why is God waiting until whenever God waits till? What is that trigger? What is it that finally makes it necessary, compulsory, or urgent for God to do that? That question is it hovers over the air, and it doesn't quite it never gets a good resolution. By analogy, we have the whole question, and we've touched on this also, the preview for the ultimate redemption. The mini redemption is the redemption from Egypt. That is why we constantly celebrate that redemption. That's why we constantly memorialize that redemption. Because that is that breakthrough moment that showed everybody what's possible. And many sages go, B'Nisan nigalu, B'Nisan atidim ligael. We were redeemed once upon a time in the month of Nisan with Pesach, and that will be the moment of ultimate redemption as well, because this is the model, right? The model that was built to show what's possible on a large global scale. So the rabbis then asked the same thing. What was it about the Exodus that it happened when it happened? Why didn't it happen 50 years before? Why didn't it happen 100 years before? Why didn't it wait another 50 years? What was special about that particular moment? And I've talked about the fact that the Haggadah says it was then or never. Then or never. That was the moment. And the urgency of that moment, according to one line of thinking, was because otherwise disaster, permanent disaster, was imminent. So in that sense, there's a very dark picture. It's the opposite of the progressive view. The progressive view is we bring the Mashiach because little by little we keep doing better, we keep fixing the world a little bit more, until we finally get, we win, we get to the finish line. What this view implies is we are Sisyphus who finally gives up pushing the rock. We finally use our logic or our powers of induction to figure out, what, I've been pushing up this rock for 10,000 years and I never get it right. I never finally fix it. Guess what? It's obviously pointless. I'm not going to push up the rock. That's when Mashiach has to come. Mashiach has to come when we give up. Mashiach has to come, or the moment before we give up, right? The moment before we lose completely. Because that victory is just too elusive, or it's too impossible for us to bear. So that doesn't answer things. It just pictures these problems in another way.
Well, it sort of does answer things, because if God wants to keep the soap opera going, then the cliffhanger has to be resolved so you can go back next Saturday and watch the next show. Now, I know that sounds flip, but the basic philosophical question, why is there something rather than nothing? Well, one possible answer is that he needs entertainment, and it creates a world so he can watch the soap opera of this unfolding of the battle of good and evil. And so he can't let it come to an end prematurely. And so miracles, whether it's, post-Holocaust in Israel, miracles keep on being needed in order to keep the show going.
Right. So that's, clearly that thought line is out there. To phrase it in a different way, what that does is it explains all of reality as a product of God's dealing with God's own boredom. So God creates the world for entertainment, and then God keeps on watching the world as a kind of a pratfall, tragic comedy, because God gets hooked on the show. And then the problem is, so why would God ever bring the Mashiach? The answer would be because eventually God gets tired of it. And then that's the boredom again. So we start with the boredom to start the world, and then we end with the boredom to finally, okay, let's go take a shower, or let's go read a good book instead of watching all this trash. So that's not exactly a deeply spiritual, reverential picture of God, right? To put it, accurately. And right, so that's the problem. The problem is when we don't go down that line, and instead we said that the world is created out of chesed, that the world was created actually out of God's yearning to interact with the world in a loving way, then it becomes so painful. Like the other way is a bitter laugh, right? This way hurts, and the other way doesn't hurt. And that's why it's real. That's why it's real. Because it keeps on saying, no, it's not this nihilistic, cynical stuff. It's real. The heart is real. And what Rav Nachman said, there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. So that's what we choose. What ends up being the real? What ends up answering to us that this is a more true perspective on what is. All right, we're going to stop here a couple of minutes early, but good enough, I think. All right. So yasher koach to everybody. Oh, next week is Thanksgiving. So we're going to officially honor Thanksgiving, Zecher LeThanksgiving, in remembrance of all the wonderful Thanksgivings that we've been able to enjoy in the past. We're going to make believe that we're going to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we're going to take next week off. Okay. All right. So I wish everyone, right? I'm right. That's correct. Next week is Thanksgiving, right? I'm not confused here, right? All right. So I want to wish everyone all the best. And God willing, we'll come back together in a couple of weeks. Okay.
For the next cliffhanger.
Yeah. Next Saturday matinee.